The air grows cold, a shiver crawls down my spine, not from the chill of the night but from something far more profound, something ancient and unseen. It whispers to me in the dead of night, weaving tales that make my blood run cold, tales of terror, of encounters that defy explanation, encounters I can't escape, forever seared into my memory. They say everyone has a story, a brush with the unknown, a glimpse into the void. These are mine. Stories born from darkness, fueled by fear. I've tried to bury them, to erase the memories that haunt me, but some things can't be forgotten. They linger in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And now, as I sit here in the cold glow of my monitor, the darkness whispers once more. It beckons me to share my nightmares, to unleash the horrors that have plagued my waking hours. I can't resist its call. I must tell my story even if it consumes me. The line between reality and nightmare blurs. What seems impossible in the light of day becomes terrifyingly real under the shroud of darkness. I've seen things, heard things that defy logic and reason. Things that would send chills down the spines of even the most skeptical minds. It started subtly, like a whisper on the wind, a cold spot in a warm room, the feeling of being watched when I was alone. I dismissed it at first, attributing it to an overactive imagination. But as the days turned into nights, the occurrences grew more frequent, more intense. I began to question my sanity. Was I losing my grip on reality, or was something sinister seeping into my world? The answer, as I would soon discover, was far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. The shadows held secrets, secrets that yearned to be revealed. And once they were, there was no going back. These stories are not for the faint of heart. They are a glimpse into the abyss, a journey into the darkest corners of our existence. They are tales of haunted houses, where whispers echo through empty halls and footsteps fall silently on creaking stairs. Tales of encounters with entities that defy description, their eyes burning with an unholy light. Prepare yourself, dear listener, for what you are about to hear will challenge your perception of reality. It will make you question everything you thought you knew about the world around you. But be warned, once you step into the shadows with me, there's no guarantee you'll ever find your way out. The journey begins now. Join me if you dare, as I recount the haunting footprints that have marked my life forever. But remember, you've been warned. These stories have a way of staying with you, long after the last word has been spoken. It started with a house, a grand old Victorian perched atop a windswept hill, the kind of place that whispered secrets on the breeze. I was drawn to it, compelled by an unseen force to step across the threshold and into its shadowy embrace. It seemed to call to me, promising a glimpse into a world beyond my own. The realtor had warned me of its past, of the family that had met an untimely end within its walls. But I dismissed it as local folklore, nothing more than tall tales to scare off potential buyers. Little did I know, the truth was far more sinister than any legend. The moment I stepped inside, I felt a chill, not the kind that sends shivers down your spine, but a deeper, more profound coldness that seemed to emanate from the very foundation of the house. It was as if the air itself was heavy with a sense of dread, a weight that pressed down on me with each step I took. The house was a labyrinth of dark hallways and dusty rooms, each one seemingly colder than the last. The air was thick with the scent of decay, a musty odor that spoke of long years of neglect and whispered tales of forgotten tragedies. The first few nights were uneventful. I busied myself with unpacking and settling into my new surroundings, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease that seemed to permeate every corner of the house. But as the days turned into nights, the silence became unbearable. It was a silence that seemed to hum with a life of its own, a pregnant quiet that hinted at unseen forces lurking just beyond the edges of perception. I began to hear things: the soft creak of floorboards, the rustling of curtains in a room with no open windows. One night, as I lay in bed, I felt a cold spot on my arm. It was as if someone had placed a block of ice directly on my skin, sending a shiver that ran down to the very marrow of my bones. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding in my chest, but the room was empty. There was no logical explanation for what I had experienced. It was at that moment, in the cold, oppressive darkness of that old house, that I realized I was not alone. Something else was present in that house with me, something unseen and unknown. The occurrences grew more frequent, more brazen. Objects would move on their own, seemingly guided by an invisible hand. Doors would slam shut with a resounding boom, echoing through the empty corridors like gunshots. And then, there were the whispers. At first, they were faint, barely audible murmurs that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. But as the days passed, they grew louder, more insistent, as if trying to convey a message I couldn't quite grasp. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, the product of an overactive imagination fueled by the stress of moving and the unsettling atmosphere of the old house. But deep down, I knew better. There was something malevolent lurking in the shadows, something that wanted me gone. One night, as I sat reading in the living room, the whispers reached a fever pitch. They swirled around me, a cacophony of disembodied voices that seemed to be closing in on all sides. I could feel a presence in the room with me, cold and menacing, watching me from the shadows. I bolted from my chair and ran upstairs to my bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me and locking it for good measure. My heart raced in my chest, pounding against my ribs like a drum. I leaned against the door, gasping for breath, trying to calm my racing heart. As I stood there catching my breath, my gaze fell upon the antique mirror that hung above the fireplace. It was a beautiful piece, with an ornate silver frame and a glass that seemed to shimmer with an ethereal glow. But what I saw in the reflection chilled me to the bone. Standing behind me, its form barely discernible in the dim light of the room, was a figure. It was tall and gaunt, its limbs unnaturally long and slender, its fingers tipped with what appeared to be claws. Its face was obscured by the shadows, but I could see its eyes, burning with an unholy light, fixed on me with an intensity that made me want to scream. I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest, but the figure was gone. There was nothing there. The room was empty. I stood there for a moment, frozen in place, my mind struggling to process what I had seen. Had I imagined it? Was I losing my mind? I didn't know what to believe anymore. All I knew was that I had to get out of that house. I turned to flee, my mind made up, but as I did, I noticed something strange on the floor. There, in the thick dust that covered the hardwood floor, was a set of footprints. They were small, child-sized footprints, and they led from the fireplace to the center of the room where they simply stopped. There were no other footprints in the dust, no sign of how they could have gotten there. I stared at those footprints, my blood turning to ice in my veins. I knew then, with a certainty that defied all logic, that I was not alone in that house. Something else was there, something evil and ancient, and it was watching me. The footprints were a sign, a warning. They were the haunting footprints of a presence that would not be ignored, and they were leading me to something I was not meant to find. The old house on the hill left its mark on me, a scar on my psyche that time couldn't heal. I sought solace in the quiet solitude of nature, hoping the vast wilderness could drown out the haunting echoes of that cursed place. It was a foolish hope, a desperate attempt to outrun the darkness that clung to me like a shroud. I found myself drawn to a remote stretch of forest, miles from civilization, where towering pines stood sentinel over a world untouched by human hands. The silence here was different, a symphony of rustling leaves and birdsong, a balm for my weary soul, or so I thought. The air grew heavy as I ventured deeper into the woods, the sunlight struggling to penetrate the thick canopy above. The sounds of nature seemed to fade, replaced by an unnerving silence that pressed in on me from all sides. It was as if the forest itself were holding its breath, watching me with 1,000 unseen eyes. I pressed on, my unease growing with each step. There was a change in the atmosphere, a subtle shift that sent a shiver down my spine. The air grew colder, damp with the scent of decaying leaves and something else, something ancient and primal that made my skin crawl. Despite the growing sense of dread, something compelled me forward. It was a pull, a silent beckoning that drew me towards the heart of the forest, towards a darkness I couldn't comprehend. I told myself it was curiosity, a desire to explore the unknown depths of this ancient woodland. But deep down, I knew it was something more. The trees grew closer together, their branches intertwined overhead, blocking out the last vestiges of sunlight. The air was thick with shadows, the ground soft and yielding beneath my feet. I felt a presence here, something old and powerful, watching me from the depths of the forest. The path ahead, barely discernible beneath a carpet of fallen leaves, twisted and turned, leading me ever deeper into the heart of the woods. I lost track of time, lost in the labyrinthine embrace of the forest, the outside world fading into a distant memory. A sense of unease settled upon me, a primal fear that whispered of unseen dangers lurking in the shadows. I should have turned back, retraced my steps while I still could, but the pull was too strong, the call of the unknown too alluring to resist. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees pressing closer, their branches reaching out like grasping claws. I felt eyes on me, watching me from the shadows, but whenever I turned to look, there was nothing there. Just the rustling of leaves and the echo of my own racing heartbeat. The silence was broken by a twig snapping underfoot, the sound amplified in the stillness of the woods. I froze, my breath catching in my throat, listening intently for any sign of movement. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end, a primal instinct warning me of danger. Then, I saw them. Hidden among the trees, their forms blending seamlessly with the shadows, were figures. They were tall and slender, their limbs unnaturally long and thin, their bodies covered in what appeared to be bark and moss. Their eyes, glowing with an eerie yellow light, followed my every move. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by fear as the figures moved closer, their movements fluid and silent, like predators stalking their prey. They circled me, their eyes never leaving mine, their presence a tangible weight that pressed down on me, suffocating me. Panic surged through me, breaking the spell that held me captive. I turned and ran, crashing through the undergrowth, my lungs burning, my legs screaming for respite. But the figures were faster, their movements effortless as they glided through the trees, their glowing eyes never leaving my back. The forest seemed to conspire against me, the trees shifting and swaying, obscuring my path, tripping me up at every turn. Thorns tore at my clothes, branches whipped across my face, but I didn't dare slow down, not with those things closing in on me. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away from those things, from this place. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper, the forest pressing in on me from all sides. I felt a presence behind me, cold and menacing, its breath hot on my neck. I glanced over my shoulder and saw one of the figures gaining on me, its long limbs propelling it forward with impossible speed. Its eyes, burning with an unholy light, seemed to bore into my soul, filling me with a terror I had never known. I stumbled and fell, my ankle twisting beneath me. Pain shot up my leg, but I couldn't stop, not now. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the searing agony, and pushed myself to my limits, my lungs screaming for air. As I rounded a bend in the path, I noticed something strange. The ground ahead was soft and muddy, and there, imprinted in the earth, was a set of footprints. They were small child-sized footprints, just like the ones I had seen in that old house on the hill. The footprints led towards a towering, ancient tree in the heart of the forest. Its trunk was gnarled and twisted, its branches reaching out like grasping claws, a sense of ancient power emanating from its very core. The figures were gone, vanished without a trace, but the footprints remained, a chilling reminder that I was not alone in this cursed wood. I knew then, with a certainty that defied all logic, that those footprints were connected to the horrors I had experienced both in that old house and in this godforsaken forest. They were a sign, a warning, a trail leading me towards a darkness I could never have imagined. And I was drawn to it, compelled by an unseen force to follow those haunting footprints deeper into the heart of the unknown. The haunting footprints in the woods led me on a relentless chase, a desperate search for answers that seemed forever out of reach. Days blurred into nights, each town I passed a mere blur on my desperate journey. It was in a small forgotten town nestled among rolling hills that I stumbled upon a weathered sign, its paint peeling, the words barely visible, "Antiquities and Curios." The shop stood alone on a street seemingly untouched by time, its windows dark, filled with an eclectic collection of objects that hinted at forgotten stories and whispered secrets. A strange pull drew me towards it, a feeling of both dread and morbid curiosity. The bell above the door chimed mournfully as I stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of dust and decay, a familiar aroma that sent shivers down my spine. The proprietor, an elderly man with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of knowledge and sorrow, looked up from a worn leather-bound book, his gaze piercing as if he had been expecting me. His face, a roadmap of wrinkles and time, held a mixture of curiosity and a quiet understanding, as if he could see the darkness that clung to me, the burden of the haunting footprints. Looking for something in particular? His voice rasped, each word a struggle, as if he rarely spoke, each syllable carrying the weight of forgotten lore. I hesitated, unsure how to explain the inexplicable, the chilling encounters that had led me to this dusty haven of the strange and unusual. My eyes wandered over the bizarre collection, ancient masks with vacant eyes, a chipped porcelain doll with a disturbingly lifelike gaze, and a tarnished silver hand mirror that seemed to reflect something more than just my own weary features. But it was a small, intricately carved amulet, displayed on a faded velvet cushion, that drew my attention, its dark stone pulsing with an unseen energy. The amulet was cold to the touch, its surface smooth and polished despite its age. It was carved from a stone I didn't recognize, a deep, obsidian black that seemed to absorb the light around it. Intricate symbols, their meaning lost to time, were etched into its surface, whispering of forgotten rituals and ancient powers. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, drawn to the amulet's strange allure, a sense of foreboding washing over me. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his features. He picked up the amulet, his gnarled fingers handling it with a reverence that bordered on fear. "This," he said, his voice a low rasp, "is a ward against evil, or so they say." He went on to explain that the amulet had been brought to him by a traveler years ago, a man haunted by nightmares and plagued by misfortune. He claimed the amulet had been found in the ruins of an ancient temple, a relic of a civilization consumed by its own dark desires. The traveler believed the amulet to be cursed, a conduit to a realm of shadow and despair. I felt a chill run down my spine as I listened to the old man's tale. The amulet, despite its purported protective nature, filled me with an unexplainable sense of dread. It was as if it were calling to me, whispering promises of forbidden knowledge and a darkness that both terrified and enticed me. Against my better judgment, I purchased the amulet. The old man's warnings echoed in my ears as I left the shop, the weight of the amulet heavy in my pocket. I tried to convince myself it was just an old trinket, a relic of a forgotten past. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a terrible mistake. That night, I couldn't sleep. The amulet seemed to burn against my skin, even through the fabric of my shirt. The air in the room felt heavy, oppressive, as if an unseen presence had taken up residence in the shadows. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the wind against the window pane sent shivers down my spine. Then, the nightmares began. Vivid, terrifying dreams that bled over into my waking hours, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. I dreamt of shadowed figures with glowing eyes, of ancient rituals and sacrifices, of a darkness that threatened to consume me whole. In my dreams, the footprints were ever present, leading me on a terrifying chase through twisted forests and crumbling ruins, towards a destination I both dreaded and desired. The amulet, a malevolent beacon, pulsed with a life of its own, guiding me towards a fate I couldn't escape. The dreams grew more intense, more real, each night a terrifying descent into madness. I became withdrawn, paranoid, seeing shadows where there were none, hearing whispers in the silence. The amulet, once cold to the touch, now radiated a subtle heat, a constant reminder of the darkness it held within. I tried to get rid of it, to throw it away, to destroy it, but it was no use. The amulet was bound to me, its power seeping into my very being, corrupting me from the inside out. I was trapped, ensnared by the same evil that had haunted me for so long. One night, as I stood in front of the mirror, the weight of the amulet heavier than ever, I noticed a change in my reflection. My eyes, once filled with hope, now burned with a cold, unfamiliar light. The shadows around me seemed to deepen, to writhe and coil as if responding to the darkness growing within me. The amulet pulsed against my chest, its symbols glowing faintly in the dim light of the room. I reached for it, my fingers trembling, and as I touched its surface, a surge of power coursed through me, dark and intoxicating. In that moment, I knew the truth. The amulet wasn't just a conduit to evil, it was amplifying the darkness that had always resided within me, feeding it, nurturing it. Terror warred with a strange sense of exhilaration. I was terrified of the darkness consuming me, but at the same time I felt strangely empowered by it. The amulet had awakened something within me, something primal and dangerous, and I was no longer sure I wanted to resist its call. The haunting footprints that had led me on this terrifying journey, the encounters with the unknown, the nightmares that plagued my every waking moment, they were all connected to the amulet, to the darkness it represented, but they were also connected to me, to a part of myself I had long tried to deny. I looked down at the amulet, its dark stone pulsing with malevolent energy, and I knew I couldn't escape it. I was bound to it, marked by its evil, forever changed by the darkness it had unleashed within me. And as I stared into the abyss of my own reflection, I saw a glimmer of those child-sized footprints reflected in my eyes, a haunting reminder that I was no longer the hunter, but the hunted. The pull of the amulet, the insidious whisper of its darkness, guided me towards a place forgotten by time, a place where despair clung to the air like a shroud. The abandoned asylum stood on the outskirts of town, a crumbling monument to forgotten souls, its broken windows like vacant eyes staring out at the world with a chilling emptiness. Locals whispered tales of the asylum, stories of patients driven mad by their own tormented minds, of cruel experiments and unspeakable horrors. The asylum was a place of legend, a breeding ground for fear and superstition, and yet I felt strangely drawn to it, as if the answers I sought, the answers to the amulet's hold on me, lay hidden within its decaying walls. The air grew heavy as I approached, the weight of the amulet a burning reminder of its dark influence. The iron gates, rusted and overgrown with ivy, creaked open with a mournful groan, as if warning me to turn back, to escape the darkness that lay within. but the pull was too strong. The need to understand the amulet's hold on me, to break free from its grasp, outweighed my fear. The asylum grounds were a testament to neglect, the once manicured gardens now a tangle of weeds and thorns. Trees, their branches twisted and gnarled, cast long, unsettling shadows across the path, their silence broken only by the cawing of crows, their black feathers like omens against the gray sky. Each step I took towards the asylum filled me with a growing sense of unease, a feeling of being watched, of being hunted by unseen eyes. The asylum's interior was a labyrinth of decaying corridors and crumbling rooms, the air thick with the scent of mildew and dust, a tangible reminder of the countless forgotten souls who had suffered within these walls. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the grime-covered windows, casting the hallways in a perpetual twilight, the shadows dancing and shifting as if animated by an unseen force. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional groan of the aging structure and the echo of my own footsteps. But beneath the silence I could sense a deeper presence, a residue of pain and despair that clung to the very fabric of the building, the lingering echoes of madness. Graffiti scrawled on the walls by unseen hands spoke of unimaginable suffering, of minds pushed to the brink and beyond. Restraints, rusted and stained, hung from the walls of padded rooms, their presence a chilling reminder of the asylum's brutal past. It was as if the very walls themselves were crying out, their voices a chorus of whispers and screams that echoed through the empty corridors. I wandered through the asylum, drawn deeper into its heart by a force I couldn't comprehend. The amulet pulsed against my chest, its energy seeming to feed off the despair that permeated the air, its influence growing stronger with each passing moment. I felt a presence here, something dark and malevolent, something that had been waiting for me. As I turned a corner, a flicker of movement at the end of the hallway caught my eye. A shadowy figure, tall and gaunt, stood silhouetted against the dim light streaming through a broken window. It was motionless, its back to me, but I could sense its presence, cold and menacing, like a predator stalking its prey. My breath caught in my throat, my heart pounding in my chest. The amulet burned against my skin, its energy pulsing in sync with the growing fear that threatened to overwhelm me. I hesitated, unsure whether to advance or flee, but something about the figure, a sense of familiarity that sent shivers down my spine, compelled me forward. "Hello?" My voice echoed in the silence, thin and reedy, betraying my fear. The figure didn't move. It stood there, unyielding, its presence a tangible weight that pressed down on me, suffocating me. I took a step closer, my footsteps echoing on the concrete floor, each step amplifying the silence that surrounded us. "Who's there?" I called out again, my voice trembling slightly. Still, there was no response, only the echo of my own voice reverberating through the empty hallway. As I drew closer, the figure slowly turned, its movements deliberate, almost painful to watch. The light from the window illuminated its face and I gasped, my blood turning to ice in my veins. It was me, or rather a twisted, spectral reflection of myself, its eyes hollow and black, its skin stretched taut over a skeletal frame. It wore the same clothes I did, the same look of terror etched on its face. But there was something else in its eyes, something cold and calculating, something vengeful. The apparition raised its hand, its long, bony fingers pointing directly at me. Its lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, but I could feel their meaning, their accusation, echoing in the silence that surrounded us. It was then that I understood. This wasn't some random specter, some lost soul drawn to the asylum's darkness. This was my own darkness, my own fear and guilt given form. It was the embodiment of all the wrong choices, all the pain I had caused, all the darkness I had tried to bury deep within myself. The amulet, I realized, hadn't brought me here to find answers but to confront the truth. It had led me to this place, to this moment, to force me to face the consequences of my actions, the darkness I had unleashed upon the world. The spectral figure, my doppelganger, my dark reflection, stepped towards me, its movements fluid and menacing, its eyes burning with an unholy light. Terror threatened to consume me, but I stood my ground, the weight of the amulet a heavy reminder of the darkness I carried within. "What do you want?" I whispered, my voice hoarse with fear. The figure stopped in front of me, its face inches from mine, its breath cold against my skin. Its lips curled into a cruel smile, revealing rows of sharp, pointed teeth. And then, in a voice that was both my own and yet utterly alien, it spoke. "Vengeance," it hissed, its voice a chilling whisper that seemed to slither through my very being. "You sought to control the darkness, to bend it to your will, but the darkness cannot be controlled, only embraced. And now, it will consume you just as it has consumed me." I stumbled back, my hand reaching for the amulet, but it was too late. The figure lunged, its cold, spectral hands closing around my throat, its eyes burning into mine with a hatred that chilled me to the core. I gasped for air, my vision blurring at the edges, the weight of my own darkness crushing the life from me. As I stared into the abyss of my own reflection, I saw the truth reflected in its eyes. The haunting footprints hadn't led me to a place, but to a destiny. I was not just marked by the darkness, I was consumed by it, destined to become another lost soul within the asylum's haunted halls. And as the darkness closed in, I knew that my torment had only just begun. The asylum's cold embrace still haunts my dreams. The weight of the amulet, the burning sensation of my own darkness lingers like a phantom limb. I escaped that desolate place, but its mark remains etched deep upon my soul, a constant reminder of the horrors I faced, the horrors I embraced. Even now, as I sit here recounting these tales, the shadows seem to draw closer, the air growing heavy with unseen eyes. The line between reality and nightmare blurs, the echoes of whispers and screams following me wherever I go. I try to outrun the memories, to bury them deep within the recesses of my mind, but they always resurface, claws digging their way through the fragile fabric of my sanity. The world seems different now, tainted by the darkness I've witnessed. The mundane routines of daily life offer little solace, a constant struggle against the encroaching shadows. Sleep offers no escape, only a descent into a deeper abyss of terror, where the haunting footprints lead me on a relentless chase through the labyrinth of my own mind. I am forever changed, marked by the encounters that have shattered my perception of reality. The world is no longer a place of comfort and security, but a breeding ground for fear, a canvas upon which the horrors I've witnessed are projected onto every darkened corner, every whispered word, every fleeting shadow. The why of it all still eludes me. Why was I chosen for this horrific journey into the heart of darkness? What malevolent force guided my steps, leading me from one terrifying encounter to the next? The questions linger, unanswered, echoing through the empty chambers of my soul. Was it the house on the hill, with its whispers of forgotten tragedies and the chilling presence of those child-sized footprints? Was it the ancient forest, where unseen eyes watched my every move, and the trees themselves seemed to conspire against me? Or was it the amulet, a conduit to a realm of shadow and despair, that amplified the darkness already within me, twisting my desires, turning my fears against me? The answers, if they exist at all, remain hidden, shrouded in a mystery that I may never unravel. Perhaps some truths are not meant to be known, some questions best left unanswered. Perhaps the pursuit of knowledge, the insatiable desire to understand the unknown, is a dangerous path, one that leads only to madness and despair. Or perhaps the answers lie within me, buried deep beneath the layers of fear and trauma, waiting to be unearthed. But am I brave enough to confront the truth, to face the darkness that resides within my own heart? Do I dare to delve into the abyss of my own mind, knowing that what I find there may shatter the remnants of my sanity. These are my stories, my confessions, my pleas for understanding in a world that shuns the darkness, that denies the existence of what it cannot comprehend. I share them now, not for sympathy or validation, but as a warning, a beacon in the encroaching night. The world is not as it seems. There are forces at work, unseen, unknown, that shape our destinies, that guide us towards our inevitable fates. The darkness is real, and it lurks in the shadows, waiting for the opportune moment to reveal itself, to claim its due. We are all haunted in some way or another, haunted by our pasts, by our choices, by the fears that whisper in the recesses of our minds. But it is in confronting our demons, in acknowledging the darkness within, that we find the strength to overcome it, to find a semblance of peace in a world consumed by shadows. These haunting footprints, they are not just mine to bear. They are a reminder that we are all connected, bound by the threads of our shared humanity, our shared capacity for both good and evil. And in the end, it is the choices we make, the paths we choose to follow, that determine whether we succumb to the darkness or find the strength to rise above it. The question remains, what will you choose? The darkness is listening.